All right, cool. Well, I believe we are live. Welcome to the uh, welcome to the night hunting podcast. We got a couple things going on here. Got to get set up. So this is the night hunting podcast. It is a podcast for night hunters and all about night hunting. And right now, we've been doing this live for the last, I guess, 10 episodes. And it's not really getting the traction that I thought it would. So I'm going to switch it up a little bit here soon. But at the same time, um, we're definitely, working on trying to figure this out, but also putting the content down and just going from there. So let me see if I can. I guess I'll just leave it here. So this is episode 10, and my name is Tony Abreu. I'm the host. I am a night hunter, and basically, I'm a night hunter. This show is sponsored by Perceptive Outdoor Gear, where we sell night vision and thermal optics, and we talk about night hunting here, and that's pretty much it. So this episode, we're going to be talking about, and let me see, I think somebody was on live as well. Let me see. Yeah, so if you are on live, feel free to drop something in the chat below, which is kind of cool. But yeah, in this episode, we're going to be talking about calling coyotes at night. So when I first started calling coyotes back in the day, which I don't even know if you can really even call it that. I used a hand call and just other stuff, made a call one time, a do-it-yourself call with an iPod and a cord and just a speaker. But anyways, used to do a lot of calling in the daytime. And then, once we got into night hunting, started calling them at night, and just a whole different ball game. And I just want to basically go through my process on how I call at night, but also I want to share some stories that I believe are um, they're very, I guess, intuitive on things that can happen at night and, what's really going on. Because nighttime is a whole different thing. So in the daytime, you have the element of vision. And most animals can see movement better than humans can. But I mean, I know I train myself on movement pretty well when I'm in the woods hunting, but I know a deer, and also I'm sure dogs are the same way. They just, they have their senses, and their movement is a big deal. So at nighttime, they lose their element of movement, in my opinion, of vision. So then they just rely on their nose and their ears. Um, so and the reason why I'm talking about it like this is because when we first started going out at night, it was ridiculous how close animals would get to you. That if it was in the daytime, they wouldn't get that close because they could see you, and at night they can't see. Like, that's the one thing that I noticed, is that they cannot see very well. And obviously, if you're using night vision, you can see, and they can see the little red glow in the light. But when you switch to thermal, they can't see nothing. Like, it is crazy. They just can't see. So the coolest thing about the night hunting thing is that you have a huge advantage. So a story on that. When I first started night hunting, I was hunting in this property, which my boss has, and it is 65 acres. And there's a road that goes straight down the middle. And then there's roads that peel off and they go to stands, and then it's woods. And we would just be in the middle of the road, the main road. And one time we were looking at a deer through with night vision, and he was walking down the road towards us, and he probably got within 30 yards, and I started stomping my foot because deer, when they see something that if they're not running, they stomp their feet to try to make them sound like they're bigger than they really are. Well, I started stomping my foot, and he would stop and he would stomp his foot back. It was hilarious. It was a little buck. And he ended up getting like 10 or 15 yards from us before he finally just ran off, but never saw us. So also, when we go out at nighttime, like obviously with night vision, it's a little harder to catch them, but with night vision, you can see their eyes glowing. And if you catch an eye, then you're honed in on with thermal, with the heat thing, they cannot hide whatsoever. And generally my way is, number one, we'll go into a field and call a field a certain way. But generally there's a couple of fields that I go to that if I see a dog there, like a coyote there, I will take off in his direction and try to get closer to him on my golf cart because I know he won't see me. And 9 times out of 10, he won't hear me either. So it's all, and now depending on the moon, if the moon is super bright, then yes, they're going to see you. My golf cart used to have a light tan roof on it, and I spray painted it black. And then my golf cart is the dark blue color. So it's really hard to see. And I have black rims and, no chrome or anything. So generally, if we see a dog in a field, then we get closer, we go closer. Or, if I call in a field, and this episode's about calling, but at night, if I go to a field and I call and I hear a pack maybe across the field in the woods, most of the time I will try to go get closer to them and call again and get them to come out of the woods. So, and this has changed, drastically from when I first started, because when I first started, I was using a call that really wasn't that good and sounds that weren't that good. And then whenever I got a good call, which right now I'm running the Icotech Night Stalker, and it's actually the Night Stalker Plus, which is a newer model with Bluetooth, but I don't really use the Bluetooth. But when I changed over like to the higher end of the Icotech brand, which are really well made, they have a super long range on them as well. The dogs just respond way differently to the sounds that are on that thing because there's a lot of really good sounds on it. So the thing is that when I first started calling, we would just go and start somewhere in the field and call and try to draw dogs from a mile away. And the more you call a field, the less that's going to happen. So now my strategy, and I still may do that some, but some fields I've called so many times that I know that a dog's not going to come from all the way over there to over here. Now, that's not always true because you just never know. But at the same time, I have little strategies that I work with in certain areas that we hunt a lot that actually help us to be more successful. And one of those is, like I said, we started in this one field. It was short this way and long this way, probably 150 acre field. And we'd start right at the front corner and call, and we heard a group of dogs across the woods, across the whole field in the woods. And we moved up to about 200 yards off the wood line and started calling again, and 2 dogs came out. So, that's just a little bit of strategy. But if the moon was a little out, but if the moon is super bright, we hide under the tree canopy if we can. We try to stay under trees if possible, so that we can hide in the shadows. And people who say that you can't shoot a dog on a full moon, I just totally disagree with that. We've killed lots of dogs on a full moon. So the calling strategy, like how do we call coyotes at night? Well, the first little tip that I'll give, number one, it's nighttime. If you're using night vision, you're probably going to be able to see less than you will thermal. A lot of times, and I'm just going to share the story here, but a lot of times when we get to a spot, I'll start out with either a distress call or a coyote howl, depending on where and what time of year it is and where we're at. And The main thing is that generally I start with a distress, and it could be a rat distress, and maybe then I'll move into rabbit. But the main point to what I'm about to say is always start at a low volume. And here's the reason why. Because if you just go to a spot and let's just say the grass is high enough to where a dog could be laying and you don't know he's there, and you blast your call wide open, you're going to blow whatever's there out. I mean, they're going to hear it. It's going to be so loud, they're going to blow out of there. So always, I always try to start at a low volume when I first get to a spot, because you never know what could be laying right there that you haven't seen yet. And even with thermal, if the vegetation is high enough, you're not going to be able to see everything. A lot of the places where I hunt in north central Florida, there are rolling hills. They're slow rolling, but there's definitely visibility issues where you could lose a dog on the bottom side of a hill or in a little bit of a dip. There are sinkholes around some of the spots where we are, which would be old phosphate things, or where the clay has settled and that the ground sinks, and the dogs tend to like to hide in those, or maybe they have dens in those. I know there's one spot that's notorious for dogs, and generally when we go in that field, if we see them, we go to the sinkhole and call from the sinkhole, because we know they're going to come back towards the sinkhole. That's just how many times we've called it. But we kill a lot of dogs in that field. So the main thing is, when you're starting out, start out with a low volume and then gradually raise it up. And what I do is, and this doesn't always work, sometimes they cooperate, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's windy and you have to turn it up, sometimes it's not. But it is amazing how your call can be facing out from you and be basically sitting there and be 10 or 15 yards in front of you and be facing out, and how it could be wide open and not sound loud. But we've actually left the call on before and walked to go get a dog, and just how loud it was, I could not believe how loud it was going, and the dog still came. But you just don't want to blow a dog out if he's really close when you start. So now generally there's a couple different ways to call. You can target their food, which is like distress, rabbit distress. I've called dogs on fox distress before, rat distress. I have a little squeaker toy that, or if a dog's super close, I'll leave the call off. And when he gets super close, I'll just and try to get him to stop. But that's more playing on the food side of things. And then you have just communication, more like howls, which are more like communication style. And then you can get into the breeding style, which, the breeding, I'm going to say, is late end of the year and then through the first maybe month, 2 months, sometimes even 3 months of the year, depending on where you're at. I know we've already been through that, and there are definitely pregnant dogs right now if they haven't started dropping dogs yet, babies. That's another way. And then also you can play on territorial style howls as well. So we've definitely had luck at different times with all styles of howls. And, it just really depends on the time of year. And honestly, sometimes you'll see a dog out there and you'll hit a sound and he won't even respond. And other times you'll hit a certain howl and he will come running like you ain't never seen this, coming charging hard fast. So, it's really, I can't really explain all that. I'm sure more people that do it, that kill hundreds of dogs a year, maybe they can be better at that. But me, I'm more exploratory. I love to call. I love to call for other people. And I just like to try things and see what happens. And generally I'm pretty good at making them come, but there are some times that, they just don't respond. So that's generally the start, though, is start out at a low volume and then gradually rise it. And I'll start out with a rat distress, maybe go to a rabbit distress, I've definitely had them, and I'm in Florida. We don't have jackrabbits here, but I've definitely had them come to jackrabbits before. Like I said, one time there was a dog out there and I couldn't get him to come to anything. I did chicken, I did the jackrabbit, and finally I ran a fox call, and that sucker turned around and came right to it and got it was his last trip. So, it just really depends on the dog. Um, so then, after that, I'll get bored with that. If I don't see anything or hear anything, then I will generally maybe just hit a single howl. Sometimes, if I don't want to run distress, I'll just hit a single howl, because a single howl, a lot of times, if there's another dog in the area, he will or she will howl back, which will give you a chance to locate one. And then for me, depending on the size of the property that we're on, I like to move towards where they are, because in the beginning I would call and call and call and wait for them to come to me. And now I'm a little more strategic because I know they can't see me. Depending on the wind too, we're always, making sure that if they're downwind of us, we don't go that way. But at the same time, if I hear a dog in a different area, I'll either reset up and call that way, or I'll move closer towards him. An example of that is we were in a 160-acre field a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of months before that, we were calling at this one particular spot. There was a tree line about 400 or 500 yards away. I think it was 500 yards away, and it's a solid tree line, and we're in a farm field, and it was pretty low as far as the vegetation goes. We started calling, and there were 6 dogs in the field between us and the tree line coming our way, and none of them would ever stop. And finally, one got in, I'm going to say less than 30 yards. They came a long way, and they were all scattered at different distances. But the first one cut across my wind, stopped, turned around, and took off running backwards. And as soon as he did that, a couple times, and he stopped. And as soon as he did, I dropped him. And that was the only dog we were able to shoot, because the rest of them took off. So, but they came over 500 yards out of a tree line. And the thing is they were probably all just sitting there. And when I started calling, they just came. So you don't ever really know where they're going to be at either. And then a couple of weeks ago, we went to the same spot. We had already shot a dog. When we first got to that spot, he was down the hill and in another area of the property. We moved back to this property, or back to where we were, where we called the 6 dogs from. And there was a possum probably about 300 yards down the hill to the left, and seen him there, was kind of calling that way. Did a couple of distress calls, nothing happened. Hit a howl, nothing happened. Hit a group howl, and dogs lit up behind where we were going, which was coming from a whole nother property. And as soon as that happened, we stopped. I went and grabbed the call. I moved the call about 30 yards back in the other direction and faced it the other way. And I moved back around the corner and started calling some more. I think I hit another group howl, and they come hard charging. And my buddy shot one, and then the other one never stopped, and I ended up missing it. So, and a couple of different things were happening that night with my gun. I was doing something different than I normally do, and it just didn't really work out as far as the shooting goes. But I missed 2 that night and ended up killing 2 more later that night. So it was a crazy night. But the point of it is that the dogs were in a different area. I moved, repositioned myself, called again, and they come in hard charging, and that was the seal of the deal. So, when do you use distress and when do you use group howls? And for me, I try to start out with the distress in certain spots, especially in a spot I've never called before. And generally I'll hit a howl before I'll just go straight into a group howl, because sometimes I'll hit a group howl in certain places, just because I know that I feel like there won't be any dogs close to me, and I'll just hit it just to see if I can get them fired up somewhere, which is exactly what happened to the 2 that I just talked about. They were fired up, that they came in charging hard. And That's what we like to do. We like to fire them up so that they don't think about anything else, and then we can take them out. So, just really depends on how, what time of year, how it is. And let's think about this now as well. So it just came off a breeding season. They're possibly dropping pups now, or even carrying pups. There's going to be a point to where once they have the pups, now they're going to be looking for a lot of food to feed the pups. So that's where the distress comes in. And then I remember there was a time a couple of years ago, maybe in May or June, where the pups were already starting to grow. And we just hit a female lone howl, and a dog just popped up, and he was just curious just to see. And it was a pup. I mean, he was, I'm going to say, a juvenile. He was definitely not firstborn or anything, but he was probably just on his own, running around, exploring stuff. And, that pretty much ended bad for him. But just doing the lone howl, is definitely, you know, it inspires curiosity, I'm going to say. And sometimes it even inspires a callback from like another howl from one of them, which helps you locate them. So key points to this episode. Number one, nighttime. They can't see as good as you can, especially if you have thermal. But if you have night vision, they can't see that good. Their vision is not as good. Now, if you are moving around a lot and making a lot of noise, they can hear really well, they can smell really well, or if the moon's bright, they can see. But if the moon's bright, just hide under the trees. That's what we do. Also, so they can't see very well. Also, so whenever we see them, we move closer. We don't try to call them to us. We try to get into a better position closer and then try to call them. It just increases our chances of taking dogs out. And you just never know where they're going to be at. They don't just stay in one spot. They move around. They're chasing food. They're just moving around. There's a property that we hunt that's butts up to another property. I mean, it's probably 3,000 acres total. And sometimes we've seen 5 in a group, and we took out 3 of them, and seen 4 in a group in a different time. And then other times we've seen 2 in a group. So it just really depends on what's happening that night or whatever. And sometimes we don't see any. I don't know much about, the moon phase and all that stuff. I just know that generally when we hunt between 8 o'clock and midnight. Sometimes we go over a little bit, but I'm not staying out all night because I got a full-time job. I got a full side business. I got kids. We got baseball. I don't have time to do all that. So we just do what we do. And, sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. But the nighttime is definitely, they cannot see you. So, and then for calling, just to reiterate, you want to start off with a slow, low volume, work your way up. If I was hunting a new property, I would probably always start out with a distress of some sort. Even the rat works good, or the rodent. A lot of the farm fields that we're in, you can see rats everywhere. And most of the time the coyotes are there because they're eating the rats. They're just easy targets. I have never, it's kind of funny. We see tons of rabbits everywhere we go. I don't even know if coyotes eat rabbits, to be honest with you. I know they do come to the rabbit distress, but it's just funny to me that we see them eating rats and chasing rats all the time. We don't ever really see them chasing rabbits. It's kind of funny, but I'm sure they do. I'm sure, they get lucky every once in a while, but rabbits are fast. But we do see a lot of rabbits. And the funny thing is when you start running at a rabbit distress call, the rabbits perk up, they start moving around. It's kind of funny, actually. Kind of gets them on edge. But anyway, and then different styles to call for food. Territory is another way. Sex another way. Mating season. And then didn't really talk about this, but pup distress, that's a big one. Or even coyote distress is a big one. Generally, big tip, generally, if you shoot and you take one down, turn on pup distress. I mean, that's it. I don't know what it is. It works sometimes and sometimes it don't, but most of the time, when it does work, it brings them right back in. It's the craziest thing. A lot of people may think that when you shoot one, it's over, and that's not true. You could turn on pup distress and they could come right back. I mean, it's just the weirdest thing. So, and again, it's dark. They don't know what's going on really. So you're just, creating scenarios, audible scenarios that, could get them coming back in range so you can take them down. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the tips on the calling coyotes at night. As far as anything else going on, last week, let me think what happened. Last week, I really did not do much hunting. I went to, let's see, last weekend was Easter, so I didn't even go out Easter hunting. Plus, it rained during the weekend. We were supposed to go out. We weren't able to because of the rain, and I'm just not real big on going out with the golf cart and all the gear and just getting totally soaked, even though the scopes are pretty well waterproof. There's a lot of other stuff that, I just don't want to get wet. But as far as during the week goes, I went to a buddy's house. He had bought a used scope from somebody and then also bought a night vision scope for me. And he was building a house, sold his house, and just kind of in the middle of this transition. And we kind of went through his stuff, and I showed him how to use the one scope, which was a thermal, and we actually mounted it on a gun and tried to sight it in. That did not go very well. And here's another tip of the day: if you are going to sight in a gun or sight in a scope, and this is for glass or anything, you have to use the same bullet. And I've definitely had issues with this before. If you take 4 bullets or 3 bullets and you sight one in and you put a different bullet in there, it's going to hit in a different spot. It's very rare that you're going to get the same bullet hole from 2 different bullets because there's different powder in it. The bullet exits the barrel different. I mean, it's just velocity. There's just all these little factors. And so we were trying to sight this thing in. It was all over the place. I'm like, what is going on? And finally at the end, he goes, oh, there's different bullets in there. And I'm just like, please, you have to sight the same bullet in. So I sight in a lot of these scopes for people, especially people that buy them from me, night vision and thermal. You have to use the same bullet. Matter of fact, my tip to you is that get a bullet that you like or the gun likes. If you know the gun already likes a certain bullet, just buy a bunch of them and just use that bullet. I mean, it's just simple. I've tried to sight in 3 different bullets before, and I did do that, but then it got confusing, and then I lost, it just makes it more confusing. I'm just shooting one bullet out of all my rifles right now, like a certain bullet, and that's it. I'm not trying to eliminate all these crazy factors that make me miss, because it sucks to miss. So anyways, all over the paper, we got them close in there, but we just have to redo that one again. I spent over an hour and a half on that. And then the next night, another gentleman bought another thermal from me, and we went and sighted him in on a bolt action 7mm 08, which is kind of like a 308, but a 7mm instead of a 30 caliber. Never shot one of those before. Wow, that's a pretty cool gun, actually. Got a lot of punch too. Got him dialed in, and then he called me on Saturday morning and said that they went out on Friday night and he shot 3 pigs with that gun in the same field. And I thought that was really cool. So, really good at sighting these things in. If you have any questions about sighting anything in or whatever, or drop a comment below. But that's basically what I did last week, and didn't really get after any animals. This week, probably going to get after something this week. Haven't really figured out my game plan yet. but definitely going to do something here because I am just itching to get back out and get on it. And my confidence level on my shorty, which is my SBR, I'm running the Rattler 35-640 on that gun. It's a 2-power. My confidence on that gun is just through the roof right now. I'm just taking great shots with it, and want to keep on going with that. Although I do need to get some more footage with the adder that I have, and it's mounted on a 5.56 or 223 rifle. So I need to do a little bit of both, both, and bring them both out and set them both up whenever I go. So, but that's pretty much it for that. If you are looking for a scope or looking for information or looking for anything on the night hunting, check out the website. It's perceptivegear.com. I got a YouTube channel, another YouTube channel, which is Perceptive Outdoors, where I do reviews and I do different videos about, the scopes and stuff. And there's some videos like vlog style on there, as well as I'm dropping some shorts right now. And that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. So yeah, give me a second and I'll look and see what next week is going to be. But next week, we're going to get back on this. And like I said, I may change the format up on this because it's not getting a lot of traction, because all these videos are just live, and I may try to put them on the main channel, but I have to do some editing before I do that. And I don't want to do a lot of editing, like chopping and do none of that, but I just need to like record it and put it back on the main channel just because it's content. There's a lot of gold nuggets in here. I'm just trying to be real and share what I'm doing, and just try to help people and draw a crowd. So I know the night hunting is popular, and I just know that this is the stuff that's really, really, there's a ton of people doing this, and it's just cool for me to be able to share some of the success that I've had and how I'm helping other people as well. So this one was Calling Coyotes. The next one is going to be after the harvest. What do we do with the coyotes? And that's pretty much going to wrap it up. So thanks for watching. If you like this podcast, drop a thumbs up, smash that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, it would be an honor for us if you did subscribe. If there's something that you want us to talk about, drop a comment below. And our goal is to start getting some type of interviews as well. I just got to figure out this whole layout and the master plan for this channel, because right now I am just in a process and moving, and I'm learning as I go, and hopefully I can build it and make it what I want it to be, the vision that I want it to be. And ultimately it's going to have a lot of cool stuff that's going to come along with it, including giveaways and stuff like that. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode. Night Hunting Podcast, Tony Abreu. We are out.